Welcome to the Self-Defense Handgun Fighter video series. This is Mark Laughlin with the Ambidextral Gunfighter with our new revised version of our pistol course from the ambidextral and Rex Applegate perspective. This will be different than almost any modern pistol course available today. If you only want to hear what you already know to be true, then this is probably not the course for you, unless you just enjoy watching people make fools of themselves. And I'm not going to deny maybe that's a possibility. I don't believe it's the case, but you know, I could be wrong. So take this whole course with a grain of salt, make use of what you like, discard the rest. Now this first video is a question. Should you carry a pistol? And I'm not going to make the case for why you should carry a pistol. I'm going to actually ask you to make the case to yourself for the reasons maybe you should not carry a pistol. I want you to think of the ways that being a concealed carry weapons holder or carrying a pistol on you, I want you to think of those legal and moral obligations that you assume when you are carrying a deadly weapon. Now, there's a terrific book by Tim Larkin on this very issue. It's called When Violence is the Answer. And he goes into great detail about the difference between social violence and asocial violence. And this is the distinction that you need to know very well so that you know when it is appropriate to brandish or make use of a deadly weapon. And so, your homework before you go to the next video in this series is to get and read or listen to the audiobook version of When Violence is the Answer. I'll put a link down below in the description. Now basically, in a very high level, the theme of this book is that you have an obligation to shed insults. And you have to kind of almost adopt this internal honor of exhibiting restraint, and it has to be within you, because a lot of this ego thing is from others' view of you, and you have to become more involved with yourself and your own self-respect. If you want to throw down over insults, leave the gun at home. When you pick up your gun, put down your ego. True ego, true self-esteem, is not this social metaphysical view. It's not others' view of their opinion of me. True self-esteem comes from within. And I highly recommend a book, and there's also an audiobook that's available, oddly enough, exclusively on YouTube. But it's a book titled The Psychology of Self-Esteem by Nathaniel Branden. Now I think if you have any of these issues where you feel like you could see yourself getting caught up in the ego battle with someone else in a bar or in a social situation, and then it could potentially escalate out of control, or in the road rage kind of thing. If you even have a hint of that, I highly recommend Psychology of Self-Esteem by Nathaniel Branden. I think you'll find it very beneficial in developing that internal self-esteem where you don't feel the need to protect your ego by use of deadly force. Okay, only 3 minutes in, and I've already asked you to read 2 books. So let me give you another option on, if you don't want to read the whole Psychology of Self-Esteem, get a copy of Social Metaphysics by the same author. It's a short 22-minute video that covers really the highlights of what's in Psychology of Self-Esteem. If you find what's in the Social Metaphysics audio lecture interesting, then of course check out the book The Psychology of Self-Esteem. I think maybe that 22-minute lecture might be enough to kind of get across the idea that you need as a handgun fighter. Now that's not to say that as being able to defend yourself, you should of course walk with confidence. You should have an upright posture, eyes level, looking around and not down and trying to look humble or anything. I want you to walk with an upright posture, shoulders back, almost military style. And because you don't want to look like prey. But not with excess swagger, just the whole, like you're looking for a fight, Now, so of course, I do advocate that if someone tries to kill you, you kill them right back. But I want you to think of when that's appropriate to use deadly force and kill somebody right back. And a good way, pistols make things like that kind of easy. It makes it almost, it makes you feel antiseptic as far as delivering deadly force. So I want you to think of these three things. Okay, some guy insulted me. So I dug his eyeball out of his skull with my thumb. Now you think you can justify that in a court of law? Or he disrespected my wife. So I threw him down on the ground on his face down and did a full body knee drop right on the back of his neck, or, turned him into a paraplegic. Do you think that's going to fly in a court of law? This dude cut me off in traffic, so I pushed him over the side of the road, picked up a big stone on the side of the road and just bashed his head in, crushed his skull. I think that's going to fly in a court of law. Much less can you live with that post-event in your, as you live out the rest of your life, knowing that you've done something like that. Well, before you get caught up in this whole public heroism thing, this kind of the swagger that we almost all get when we first start carrying a weapon. But before you get on this public swagger, I want you to imagine two worst case scenarios as a concealed carry weapons holder, or as a person carrying a deadly force weapon. I want to imagine yourself facing homicide charges after a social confrontation escalates. Just an average social confrontation escalates because you don't back down. You got the ego thing going, and before you know it, maybe this dude pulls out a knife, and then you pull out a gun, and you blast him, and he's dead. Now, think about this facing homicide charges for that because you escalated while you were armed. And it's basically the rest of your life is ruined. Or even worse, think that you've had a negligent or accidental discharge or misidentified a target and you killed your spouse or one of your children. Now let that sink in before you carry a weapon for self-defense. Before you start thinking you're going to become this self-defense gunfighter. Because you need to develop not only the awareness of when is it appropriate to use a weapon, you need to be skilled in the use of that weapon and safe in the use of that weapon so you not kill innocents. It is often said that it is better to be judged by 12 than carried by 6. I'd like to append that and say it's better to be carried by 6 than judged ill by yourself. For example, in the case that you accidentally or negligently killed a child. Now, as a preview and what's forthcoming in this series, after you've read Tim Larkin's book, When Violence is the Answer, as a preview, the forthcoming videos in this series, the next one will be on safety. That is handling a firearm safely. And the third video will be on ballistic mystics. And then we'll be covering when it happens against the fan. That is, when do these true life-threatening events occur out in the real world? And then, what is the physiological response of you when this happens out in the real world? And then we're going to go over why I advocate being ambidextrous. Just like I do with my rifles, being ambidextrous with your pistol, and why and how, a little bit of how. And then why I advocate being primarily presenting your weapon left-handed. Left-hand primary? How about trying to think of some reasons why I might advocate for left hand as being your primary presentation of your weapon before that video comes up. Write down the list and we'll compare notes when we get there. And we will cover the Rex Applegate point shooting technique and why I regard it as the key baseline skill for handgun fighting. Now we will also cover the thumbs forward two-handed grip and sighted fire, and we will also cover why I think that is largely for use of law enforcement. And the final video in this series will be on the ideal characteristics of the AmbGun pistol. This is Mark Laughlin with the Ambidextrous Gunfighter. I hope you enjoy this self-defense handgun fighter video series.
Someone ever tries to kill you, you try to kill them right back.